people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. We're going to kick it off with the Stephanie Piñeiro versus Diana Tapia fight that took place on the undercard of Matias versus Paro. The prediction stuck, and Stephanie won a lopsided decision. You can tell the story of this fight in just a few sentences.
Yeah.
That Stephanie was too agile, too mobile, light on her feet, quicker to the draw than Diana, and Diana was just too slow, too flat-footed, couldn't keep up with her or keep on her. In front of what was a very receptive crowd in Puerto Rico, Stephanie, on the balls of her feet, just sticking that jab out there, tagging Diana round after round after round. You could see she had pop, you could see she had power, but this was her first 10-rounder. Stephanie's output slowed from the middle of the fight towards the back end of it. Still kept her shape and still kept her form, still kept control, but you could see that she was getting tired. Bad engine? Wouldn't say that Stephanie has a bad engine so much as it's a lack of experience. She never fought in a 10-rounder before. That's what it was. So there's still more work that needs doing and more development that needs to happen if it is their intention to put Stephanie Piñeiro in the ring with Sandy Ryan in the not-so-distant future. She's going to need at least one or two more 10-rounders before she's really ready for a fight like that. Her fitness has to improve. I wouldn't say that she has a bad engine. I would say that she needs more experience, more rounds in the bank, and the same is true for any fighter in this situation. That's it. Everything I expected to see, I saw from Stephanie Piñeiro, fighting on the balls of her feet, using the jab, setting Diana Tapia up, walking her into straight punches. It was good. Towards the tail end of the fight, when she was sitting on her punches a little more and not moving as much, she got in with a really meaty body shot that visibly hurt Diana Tapia. So you see that the power is there, even later on into the fight. She's got pop. She could have, if she had spent a little less time on her bicycle and a little bit more time stepping into her punches and putting them together, because she clearly hurt Diana, and Diana was ready to go. But by then you could see Stephanie was tired, didn't have enough left in the tank to really put them together and take it to Diana. It's my only critique, which is no critique at all, just an observation that Stephanie does need more rounds. She needs more experience. And the more experience she gets, the more dangerous she could become for Sandy Ryan, because stylistically, based on styles, Stephanie already has the right style for the job. She just needs more development, more experience. It was a good showing. She looked good, but she also looked green. Bottom line, the prediction stuck. The prediction definitely stuck, but those eggs need more bacon. In the main event, what was the shock upset loss of then reigning champion Subriel Matias, what is fast becoming the hometown jinx. The prediction didn't stick. But we talked about this in the build-up, that Subriel Matias does have a live one in front of him, and because this is a homecoming fight, you want to be careful. You don't want to be distracted. You don't want to think too hard on what you're going to do after that homecoming fight, because it's not a foregone conclusion that you will win it. Subriel didn't. In the fight, what you noticed almost immediately was that Paro wasn't scared. He wasn't afraid to mix it up with Subriel Matias mid-range to inside, putting punches together and using that as opportunities to get to the side of Subriel. He wasn't just standing toe-to-toe with him, standing in one spot. He was stepping around him while he put the punches together to not give Subriel a stationary target. Make him work for his meal. And he was busy with the punches, busy with the combinations. Subriel was too lax. I think too complacent, too comfortable, too confident that he would stop the guy too many times in the fight that before you knew it, the fight was getting away from him. Marching forward and looking to pin Paro down on the ropes, in moments that he did, Liam Paro, quite wily, spun off those ropes and just kept moving, kept surviving. A part of Liam's victory is strategy, nuts and bolts boxing, not giving the combination puncher a clear target or a stationary target. A part of it was that, but another part of it was just being tough enough
to endure,
to survive, as I don't think very many guys in this division would have been able to stand up to the punishment that he was taking from Subriel, because it's not like Subriel wasn't touching him. He was touching him.
Uppercuts up the middle, body shots around the side, that would have folded up a lot of other guys.
Liam didn't fold. As cliche as it might sound, you have to want it. And Liam Paro wanted it because he kept fighting. Even when he was tired and even when he was hurt and he was on the run, he kept throwing punches. He did a good job of not just fighting off Subriel Matias, but outmaneuvering him.
That's his weakness.
The same weakness a lot of mid-range to inside pressure fighters have is they don't have the best feet.
Footwork.
They spend the majority of a round and the majority of a fight trying to pin down their opponent so they can sit down on their punches. Thus, they don't glide around the ring like they're on ice skates. They don't have the best feet. If you watch this fight, that's what Liam Paro used to his advantage. Boxing when he needed to, punching when he needed to, alternating between the two, to survive, to win it.
And he did.
The prediction didn't stick. Another shock upset loss in what was supposed to be a big homecoming fight, like the loss that Jarrett Hurd suffered to Julian Williams in his homecoming fight, like the loss Julian Williams suffered to Jason Rosario in his homecoming fight, like the loss that Katie Taylor suffered in what was her homecoming fighter, Giovanni Santillán, in his.
To Brian Norman.
Is it that the fighters get all swept up in the occasion? They become distracted by fighting in front of the hometown crowd. They're focused on everything but the fighter in front of them. Is that what it is?
Because this is becoming a regular occurrence.
You know, Jaron Ennis, he's got his homecoming fight coming up with a late replacement in David Avanesian. Should we be worried?
Was Subriel Matias overrated?
No, I don't think he was overrated. I think Liam Paro was underrated and underestimated.
I knew he was live in the fight. I said he was live. I just didn't think he would win.
But I don't think him winning the fight makes Subriel Matias overrated. I think it makes Liam underrated because Subriel is still a near and apparent threat to most of the guys at 140 pounds. Not everybody is going to stand up to what Liam stood up to.
You still think he beats Devin?
Absolutely. I don't think Devin would have been able to take that many hooks and that many body shots mid-range to inside. And we know he's not as prolific a puncher as Liam Paro.
Not as busy within a round, and he can't land with the same authority. Don't forget that Devin can't punch. He can't crack an egg.
Boxing fans oftentimes living in extremes, they may tell themselves that maybe Subriel just isn't as dangerous as people said he was. No, he's still dangerous. Liam is just better than advertised.
Australia's got a new champion.
Now I'm thinking that Subriel might want a rematch, the chance to win his world title back, but if he does, he might have to go to Australia to do it.
If they even give him a rematch.
They might not, but if he's fortunate enough that he can get a second crack at the apple, Liam won the belt from you in your neck of the woods, thus you might have to go to his to try to get it back.
And that's if they even afford you that opportunity. They might not. They might want to unify.
Which is a separate conversation. This was a very good showing, a very strong showing for Liam Paro. The prediction didn't stick. The title changed hands. We then come to the PBC on Amazon show that was running parallel to the Matchroom show on DAZN. The co-main event to the main event, the David Benavidez versus Alexander Gvozdyk fight. The prediction didn't stick. It didn't stick on paper.
I think Gvozdyk won.
But David Benavidez was awarded the decision. In truth, I should have been a lot more cynical with my prediction that so long as David finishes this fight on his feet, they don't care. They'll give him the decision, and his fans,
they'll pretend he looked amazing.
Tell everybody that he won. Gaslight the entire boxing community at large to maintain this image, this narrative, that David is some kind of a monster. He didn't look like a monster to me yesterday.
When he couldn't outsize the guy, outweigh the guy, or push the guy around, which he didn't, he got pushed around.
They got off to a fast start, David and Alexander. They got off to a fast start, and they were letting their hands go, but nobody was really landing anything of substance, any meaty punches that had a noticeable effect. Neither of them at the start.
They were letting their hands go. They definitely were.
What was most noticeable is that a lot of David's punches were landing landing on Alexander's arms and gloves. He even tried for that trademark shoe shine of his.
Well, he still had speed and sharpness.
Towards the beginning of the fight, none of the punches actually got in.
That doesn't matter to the judges. So long as David throws, they're gonna act like it landed.
His fans will too. As I'm watching this fight, I'm watching Alexander Usyk keep the jab out there, and it's a very short jab, a blinding jab that he's using to blind David Benavidez to then step around him.
Pivot.
Get to the side of David Benavidez, create new angles and create space, keep space.
Keep the jab working.
From the beginning to the middle, keeping shape the whole time. And from the beginning to the middle, you see David's output start to slow. He's not throwing combination punches anymore. He starts trying for singles.
Round 6 and 7, around there.
David's not throwing as many punches. He's breathing with his mouth open. His body language.
He looked tired.
Not surprised that he looked tired because he was carrying more weight into a fight than what he normally carries against a bigger guy than he normally fights, a bigger man. That normally, in a David Benavidez fight, by rounds 6 and 7, he will have amassed enough damage on his opponent that he's in control and he's starting to wear the guy down. That wasn't the case yesterday with Gvozdyk. He never put a dent in that guy, never hurt that guy, never buckled that guy.
Nothing.
But in the fight, at the end of every single round, what the production team chose to highlight were the few moments and the few spots where David actually gets off a punch and the punch lands. Even if those moments were far and few, and even if in those moments nothing really happens, it doesn't have a visible effect.
From one round to the next, you know how they show you highlights of the round at the end of it?
At the end of every single round, all they were highlighting were punches that got in for David, as if Gvozdyk wasn't landing any punches. I saw him land a good number of right hands penetrating the guard.
Yeah, David took them well.
But they got in. And you never would have known it if you were listening to the commentators or looking at the highlights at the end of every single round.
It's gaslighting. They're trying to gaslight you into thinking that David's pitching a shutout.
Or putting on a clinic. It was anything but. No, I had Gvozdyk winning the fight from the middle into the end of it.
I just wasn't cynical enough with my prediction that unless Gvozdyk stops this guy, he's not going to get a fair shake on the cards. No way.
No matter how many rounds he piles up, no matter how many rounds he wins, they're going to do whatever they have to do to keep David an unbeaten fighter. What cannot be refuted, what cannot be debated.
David couldn't put a dent in this guy.
Didn't even hurt his feelings. At the end of the fight, Gvozdyk didn't have a scratch on him, and there was no moment in the fight where his legs buckle and he's rattled and he's ready to go and he's taking punishment, he's taking punches. There was no moment like that in the fight. What few punches got in the middle and the end of the fight for David, they had no effect on Gvozdyk. So what that tells me is this guy ain't the puncher at 175 that he pretends to be at 168.
Nope.
That if you put him in the ring with Bivol and you put him in the ring with Better Beef, they finish him.
He's food.
This is how you looked against the 37-year-old Alexander Gvozdyk, a much older version of this fighter than the fighter that Better Beef stopped years ago.
Years later.
You never hurt him in the fight. You never dropped him. You couldn't stop him. And you're fighting a much older version of this fighter than the version of him that Artur fought, the version of him that Artur stopped.
But he's not old enough for you? You can't stop him?
So what that tells me is that David can't crack like Artur can crack.
David's fitness.
What normally happens in a David Benavidez fight is his fitness holds up long enough after his opponent's fitness and cardio has been depleted, their energy levels, that he can start piling up the damage. Well, that didn't happen yesterday. And yesterday, he was fighting a 37-year-old fighter. If you can't wear out a 37-year-old, you're not going to wear out Dmitry Bivol,
who's several years younger than Alexander Gvozdyk. And when the fuck have you ever seen Dmitry get tired?
When has that ever happened? That if David's methodology, up until this point, and what's been working for him, is that his opponents get tired.
When have you ever seen Dmitry get tired?
You got tired yesterday. You got tired yesterday in the mid to late rounds fighting a 37-year-old.
Dmitry is several years younger than Alexander Gvozdyk, and his fitness...
I mean, even Gvozdyk kept his shape. The whole 36 minutes, the whole fight. Gvozdyk kept his shape, and it was David that looked tired. It was David that was slowing down.
Gets tired, his output wanes, and he starts trying for single punches as if he has single punching power. You ain't have that kind of power at 168. You definitely ain't got it at 175.
The American hype job survives
in part Because Gvozdyk's fighting like they won't job him, like they won't rob him, like he's gonna get a fair shake.
The only critique that I have for the fight that Gvozdyk fought is that he didn't try to hurt the guy.
Try hard enough.
Maybe it's because of his age. You know, he is 37 years old. He kept his shape in there. He actually looked good in there, but he didn't pull the trigger.
He didn't try hard enough to put a dent in David Benavidez, though from what I saw, if he would have hit the gas, he could have.
It was a glorified sparring session.
Mediocre!
After that performance, I don't expect that David is gonna want to fight the winner of Better B versus Bivol.
Mediocre!
I expect that he's gonna double down on his Canelo Alvarez callouts. That's what he's gonna pursue. He's not gonna pursue the winner of Better B versus Bivol.
Mediocre!
Because he looked mediocre yesterday, and to me, he lost. 7-5 Gvozdyk is how I had it.
Mediocre!
And finally, we come to the main event of that same card, the Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin fight. No surprises here, and not a fight that I spent a whole lot of time on because they didn't pick Frank Martin for no reason. They don't put Gervonta Davis in risky situations, and they don't put him in there with guys that stand a legitimate chance of winning. Thus, when he knocked Frank Martin out after looking pretty bad,
The prediction stuck.
you didn't need to be all that observant or conduct careful analysis to know that Gervonta Davis was going to knock this guy out, because this guy is a fucking nobody.
He's not a major player at 135 pounds.
With high-profile victories and signature victories over the somebodies at 135 pounds, the aesthetic of the match was not that dissimilar from what you see in Gervonta Davis's fights, that he might lose a couple of rounds and he looks human in spots, that maneuvering and movement is a part of the blueprint to beat him.
Setting traps.
Setting up counters and using the ring, moving around, not standing in one spot and staying out of the pocket. That's how you can beat Gervonta Davis.
This is how Gervonta looked with Frank Martin. How would he have looked with Devin Haney when he was there at 135? How would he look with Shakur Stevenson?
Are we supposed to believe that Frank Martin is a better fighter than they are, or on the same level that they are? He isn't.
There's no evidence to suggest that he is.
Now, in spite of some early success, out-hustling and out-maneuvering Gervonta Davis and regularly walking him into punches and putting one or two punches together in spots, in spite of all of that, he still got himself knocked out because he slowed down. He got tired.
He got pinned down on the ropes. Gervonta Davis landed an uppercut. I think it was an uppercut that he landed that rattled him, and he finished him off with a left hand.
My question
Is what happens if the guy doesn't get tired, and what happens if the guy you're fighting is a higher grade, a higher tier of fighter with better fitness than a Frank Martin? What happens then?
that took 8 rounds. It took Gervonta Davis 8 rounds to finally land a meaningful shot, a kill shot, on a guy like Frank Martin.
Personally, I don't think he would find it with Shakur Stevenson.
Style doesn't do Gervonta Davis's economic minimalist approach to boxing style any favors. Gervonta Davis is not a prolific puncher within a round. He doesn't throw that many combinations. What he's looking for is a single shot to do the guy, and against the more defensively astute fighter, he won't get that opportunity.
Thus, Shakur Stevenson may never get the opportunity to face him.
Now, least of all, that Gervonta Davis is the older fighter in the conversation, coming up on 30. Who's he going to fight after this? Do I really believe that he's going to fight Vasyl Lomachenko in November? Well, I'll put it this way. I'm not convinced he's going to, but he'll fight Lomachenko before he fights Shakur.
If he had to choose between those two.
Though I'm not fully convinced he'll fight either of them, because Ryan Garcia just so happened to be ringside for the match. And they would make more money with each other than they'd make fighting anybody else.
So maybe they'll look for a middle ground to do a rematch?
Or maybe Gervonta Davis will reheat his old leftovers and move up to 140 to fight Isaac Cruz. Maybe he'll do a rematch with him.
But I wasn't expecting any surprises yesterday with Gervonta, and I'm not expecting any moving forward.